This is KossTalk with Evan Kossman, and you are listening to episode 2, but our first official interview. Woo! Okay, so this week was with Richard Waters. He is the founder and creator of Phantom Glass, a fantastic screen protector. And so we talked about that, where he dropped out of school to start it up. He figured school wasn't for him. We talked about starting a business, everything that goes into that, and what he's learned since. Hope you guys enjoyed the episode. It was a lot of fun to record. And without further ado, welcome to KossTalk. So let's start at the beginning of Phantom Glass. Talk about your decision to leave school and how it wasn't for you.
Yeah, so basically I was at U of T, and I was working at the bank. I worked at RBC and just as a teller. At that time they were transitioning into more sales, and I really liked the job at the bank, and I had an idea for another business with eyeglasses, and then that somehow, slowly turned itself into using optical glass for screen protection. And what actually convinced me to leave was I created a prototype of the product, and I shopped it around to Staples and Best Buy and a couple of the tech retailers, and they jumped on it. So having a firm order commitment was a little bit easier to to leave school and do this than not having anything and sort of hoping.
So you already had it sort of planned out before you dropped out. You were like actually into the business before you decided to commit all the way through. You were still in school.
Yeah, I failed first year pretty terribly.
Oh, that's
By
okay.
the time it was done, my transcript's actually in my office.
Oh yeah, no, keep that as a sign of accomplishment.
So bad. I got like a 40, a 45. It wasn't for me. I didn't like it. I was like, what am I doing? Political science, working to get a BA that all of my colleagues at the bank have for, whatever we were making at the time. And one thing led to another. The product, I actually, it was my father who said, if you create the product and sell it, sort of sell it before you build it. A lot of people say build it and they will come, but this was more of a, sell it and then build it. It makes it a lot easier to spend the money on incorporating and patents and trademarks and logo design and website and all this stuff when you have an order and okay, I'm going somewhere. I'm not just banging my head against the wall.
Yeah, for sure. That's pretty cool. So how did you realize when you were coming up with the idea that you were actually onto something before you brought it to these businesses?
It's interesting. I sort of was playing around with the idea. We created a prototype, a very rough prototype, and I got it in the mail. I was working with a factory that makes eyeglasses, right? The lenses. They shipped it in the mail, and I was like, okay, let's see. And I, got it to work, and I was like, okay, it has potential, but it was so clear and smooth. I was like, okay, yeah, this is really cool. Being a techie, I always, purchase screen protectors, and I was OCD about not scratching my device, putting it in a case. So then when I created something that was better, I was like kind of shocked. Shocked that it worked. Yeah. I was like, no way. I was like, okay, cool.
Did you figure you were just onto something that no one else thought of, or what was that?
What I worked in, I guess, grade 7 or grade 8, during the summer, I worked for a doctor, for a surgeon. And I was just assisting me at a business idea. He wanted to make, some product. And he told me, he said, for every good idea you think you have, there's 3 other people in the world that probably have it. And 2 of them are definitely in Russia. That was literally what he believed. So I was thinking to myself, if someone else comes up with it, okay. It was just a really cool idea. And I thought, I guess I better run with it and see what happens.
So you had this idea while we were in Crestwood in grade 8, 9?
No.
Grade 8, 7,
No, I just mean, that theory on ideas.
Oh, okay.
I came up with the idea in, 2012 12, I guess, 13.
Damn, yeah.
Yeah, so, oh my God. I've been
Happy
doing this for too
4th, 5th
long.
year birthday.
I've been doing this for too long. Yeah, no, it's really interesting the way that works. And then from there, looking back to now, hindsight is 2020. I look at some of the things I've done. I'm like, oh my God, why did I do that? But
So talk about a couple of those things.
oh boy, when we first started doing this, it was just me in a room, actually right over there. I set up in a little room, and some of the mistakes were basically working with distribution in the retail channel. So the way it works is, Staples and Best Buy and all these guys won't cut you a direct purchase order. You go through a distributor, and the distributors are great, and they promise the moon, and they deliver much less than that. So we wasted a lot of money in inventory, not forecasting, sort of blindly trusting, no problem. If Staples says they're going to sell, $10 million of product, we're going to make it, And then you're sort of like, oh, well, they didn't sell that much, so what do we do with that, So if you know anyone that wants 5,000 iPad 1, 2, and 3 screen protectors, let me know.
My mom's still shipping her around.
Well, there you go. Does she want 1,000? So bad.
Oh God. Yeah. So basically, that was one of the things that you learned. You oversupplied versus the demand, or it was more based on the relations with the people.
Yeah, it's a relationship thing. It's a trust thing, and then you wind up manufacturing. The thing is, it's not like it's not like buying something where you're like, oh, I'll just return it. It's like you make it, and it's like, uh-oh. I would say was a really big one in the beginning. Was like, we just blindly manufactured orders, whereas now we're very sort of, it's experience, right? What a retailer says. Oh, I'm going to sell, X number of these. You're like, yeah, you're probably going to do like a third of that. So they try to gouge you for better pricing with these forecasts that don't exist. So.
So you try to meet them in the middle somewhere, and that's fair. That's compromise. That's business.
And that's been that was like a learning experience. So, yeah.
Would you say that was one of the harder things when you were establishing Phantom Glass, or what would you say those were?
The hardest thing for me, being disorganized, is organizing all of the little pieces. Package design is fun. I love that. Product design I love that. It's fun. It's tedious, but it's fun. There's a whole bunch of different moving parts. Ordering product, customs clearance, UPC codes. I had no idea that you had to buy UPC codes.
Seriously?
Yeah, you have to.
Today I learned.
There you go. You have to go buy a prefix, and we did all this stuff that we had no idea what we were doing. Inventory management. We didn't have inventory management software for probably a lot longer than we should have because we had a third party managing it, and it's getting on top of that and all the moving pieces was really tough.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's fair. It's obviously hard starting a business. So how did you get in contact with your distributors, and how did you try to establish the business essentially?
So that was interesting. So getting in touch with the distributors was, I did sort of like a top-down approach, I guess, instead of a bottom-up. So typically, if you have an idea, you would, I would, my original thinking was, well, go to a distributor and say, hey, you want to sell these? And they'll sort of go, yeah, or no, or, oh my God, this is amazing. And what you realize is that it's really hard when you have these massive companies dealing with another massive company in the middle. So I went to the massive companies directly. I called Staples. I left the guy a voicemail, I'll never forget. I said, hey man, how are you? It's Richard giving you a call. Hope all's well. Give me a call back, 416. And, I gave him my phone number. And he called back and he was like, hey, what's going on? And I'm like, oh, who is this? And I was like, oh, yeah, hey, so we should set up a meeting. I pretended like I knew him, and he called me back, set up a meeting, showed him the product. He was like, yeah, I love it. We're in. We'll place an order. Nice. I was like, how do we do that? He's like, well, you can go through this distributor or that distributor. So that was easy for us to go to the distributor. And, these distributors are huge. They're like billion-dollar companies.
Oh, I'm sure, yeah.
So you go to them and you're like, hey, I'm a small guy and I have an idea. They're like, that's cute. We're not an incubator. But then when you go to them and say, hey, I have an order, they're like, oh, okay, where do you want us to sign?
Because all the work's basically done for them. They just have to get from A to B.
You got it.
Okay. So once the product was in stores, what did you do to bring notice to it?
That's interesting. So I would say that that's the hardest part of what we've done and what we continue to do. Pushing customers into the stores instead of pushing the product at the customer once they're in the store.
Interesting.
So there's a mentality in retail that, and a lot of retailers, a huge portion of their revenue comes from, and this is the traditional brick and mortar retailers and the online, a huge portion of the revenue comes from, hey, you have a product and you sell Phantom Glass at, whatever retailer. We're going to charge you $5,000 to put you in the flyer. You're like, okay, cool. And they're like, look, it's 1 billion impressions and all this stuff. And you're like, okay. So you put in the flyer and you see a small uptick, and then by the time you do the math, you're like, we broke even, so you got the exposure. But the real secret is, how do you, well, not secret, the real key is, how do you communicate to people without shoving it down their throat, but push them to go to the stores instead of hope that they see it at the store. Especially now, since we started to now, retail has changed completely.
How so?
Well, when we started, retail was like, oh, you want to be in big box retail. This is great. And now even, it was sort of on its last final swoop, so to speak. And then now it's like, the retailers are struggling. They're closing locations. The sales have declined pretty substantially compared to where they were, just because in brick and mortar.
Yeah, of course. No, people go in to test the product and buy it online at a different store.
And dealing with Canada, I mean, we're so different, right? Like, our whole country is the population of the southern U.S., southern California.
Exactly,
So it's like when you deal with the States, everything's online. You can, like, Staples has, 250 stores, and in the States, they probably have thousands. Like, that's the difference. And then, for them to close 300 stores in the States is nothing, but that's the total number of stores they have in Canada. So it's interesting. And that was the biggest thing, was trying to get customers to go buy the product. We tried not, starting off, you don't want to spend millions of dollars on, we're not going to go do a Super Bowl commercial. We did we did reviews with certain YouTube reviewers when we started. You'd send them free product, they'd be like, oh my god, thank you so much, I love this, and make a video. Now it's like, oh cool, you sent us product, so for $5,000 we'll do a 3-minute video. It's like, what? So everyone's sort of pay to play now, which also disenchants me with YouTube reviewers. But
well, luckily this one's free. It's on me.
There you go. Exactly. Thank you.
So basically, when you were starting up, you mentioned how your dad helped you and how the guy gave you advice about the guys in Russia. But who were the people you say actually gave you advice when you were starting out? And what did they say, rather?
It was the biggest mentor, I would say, was my father. Not so much in a, here, son, go start a business, or I started this and you do it. It was like, okay, what do I do? I have something here. And he was very helpful. There's obviously a generational difference in terms of, he really understands the technology. He understood right away, goes, you're onto something. But business-wise, business practice-wise, it was a lot of, going back and forth together and learning and growing and, having someone, who wasn't 18 at the time to come into the meetings, and someone who added that level of maturity. That was a huge help.
Must be weird to be the boss of people that are older than you. What's that like?
It's pretty bizarre. It's actually really uncomfortable for me sometimes.
Really?
One of my employees I've actually known for a long time, and she's a lot old, a lot older than me. And you just sort of don't want to tell that person what to do. The other staff of mine are sort of closer in age, but still older, so it's a little uncomfortable.
So how did you start with her? How did you hire her to the business?
You know what, at first I had someone working with me who I'd known for a while, and then I brought on, she sort of said, hey, I have a friend, and then she had another friend, so we sort of built up the workplace as it was, and we're all sort of young. It's a little bit different because I don't have partners, in the sense of it's not 3 young kids with an idea, it was just
it's one young kid with an idea.
So it's sort of a little bit awkward. I try to distance myself from being the boss, so to speak, but sometimes you have to. So
how hard is it to tread that line between being everyone's friend and being the boss?
It's pretty tough. I try to be pretty relaxed and not worry, and then it gets sort of awkward when you're like, hey, can you do this, or what's going on with that? But my people are actually really good. I'm really lucky that they don't need much babysitting. That's the goal. I don't want to hire people that need babysitting, because I don't want to do it.
That's key. So what do you say when they come to you for guidance on things? Do you make the executive decision, or is it a give and take sort of situation?
It's a give and take. When I worked at the bank, it was corporate, right? It's a very direct line of management. So you would have yourself and then your manager and then that manager's manager, continue. So, because of that, when people come to me, I always say, well, what do you think we should do? And I don't mean it condescendingly or sarcastically. It's more, they'll come, oh, customer has an issue. They just said, they put on their product and, they broke it and they want money back even though it was their fault. What do we do? I'm like, well, what would you do? What do you think we should do? And that usually helps us make a better decision. Because it's us working together instead of me saying, oh, give them their money back or decline or, it's a lot better.
Do you find there are times when you lean on them just as much as they may lean on you for guidance?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's like I said, it's also interesting because they're not owners per se, but
they're invested.
Yeah. They're like, come to work 9 to 5. It's really hard with a small company because, it's very difficult to see the difference between, if it's huge or not.
So, with an established business now, what challenges do you face?
Always lots of challenges. I would say the biggest one is, our biggest challenge is finding good people. Once you find someone good and then, sort of, I guess it's staffing and then also managing growth. Growth is interesting because people say, oh, business growth is amazing. It's like, yeah, as long as you're growing at a pace that's sustainable. And we've really been seeing a lot of crazy growth in the past year.
Oh, I'm sure.
So it's like trying to gain a hold of that and do it that way. The growth that we've experienced is it's interesting. It's behind the scenes growth. It's not like, look, we're in all these once you're in all these retailers, you're in, and it's like, okay, cool, and hopefully you can maintain that. It's more a matter of the behind the scenes growth of doing stuff on projects that most of the general public wouldn't even think about. That to me is really cool, and focusing on that growth where the volume is huge. It's like trying to keep up with that. That's a pretty tough obstacle.
So with your business, obviously, like, you make new screens as new phones come out, so you sort of have that consistent thing, but how do you look for expansion? Yeah,
so it's really interesting. Expansion is an interesting sort of area. We focus a lot on, at the beginning we were very Apple-centric. We did a lot of, we focused on the Apple product because Apple users aren't afraid to spend $30 on a screen protector. Android users typically don't want to spend that money, although now we see a lot of Android users who say, hey, I want a premium screen protector.
It's interesting that there's the distinction, yeah.
We didn't see, at first, and now we're seeing, as Android phones are $1,000 plus now, there's the people that are buying them used to be iPhone guys, so they say, hey, I want a good screen protector. And it's funny because we don't, pull any punches, so to speak, when it comes to, it's a $35 screen protector. It's not your buy 3 on Amazon for $10, and we make that distinction very clearly. You get what you pay for, and that's sort of the clientele we're going after. We expanded into the photography world, and I thought, oh yeah, we'll do cameras, like who knows, covering the LCDs on cameras. And we thought, yeah, we'll sell a few, and it's actually one of our biggest sellers, that whole line.
Cool.
And, also the specialized industry stuff, just breaking into different spaces. It's kind of neat.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, in the simplest sense, do you specifically consider yourself successful? I know that's a deep thought, but...
Well, I haven't gotten a job yet. So
you just made one.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I it's not... It's funny because success is so different to a lot of different people. Like, for me, being able to, wake up and have something to do, or in most cases stay up all night dealing with it overseas. But, to have something to do that's my own and not have to worry about, a manager, a boss. Like, for me, that's awesome. Most businesses, they say, most businesses don't make it, in the first 3 years. And when I first heard that, I was like, oh, please, we'll be fine. And then you're going through and you're like, oh, wow, that was hard. You're like, we did it and it's great, but it's not easy. And, one of my mantras is, if it was easy, everyone would do it. Yeah. Right? So I guess, yeah, considering I haven't gotten a job, I'd say I'm doing okay.
No, honestly, it's great to see. So to end the podcast, I want to create a little bit of continuity between episodes. So not knowing who my next guest is, do you have a question for that person? It can be silly, it can be serious. What do you want to ask?
That is awesome.
Thank you.
That is amazing. Let's think. That's a really good question. What do you want to ask the next guest?
With no idea who or what they are.
Wow. Did they think that they would be in the position they are 3 years ago? That's a good question for them.
And with ending this, did you?
Nope. I have no idea. The amount of useless crap that's floating around in my brain is like mind-boggling. Like, and useless, I mean, we use it every day, but it's just like, I had no idea, SKU setups and stock rotations, and like, it's like, what? You just sort of learn as you go. Awesome. I had no idea I'd be here.
All right, Richard. Well, thank you very much for being the first guest on KossTalk, and thank you to listeners for listening.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, all the best.
Subscribe.
Please. All right, thanks again to Richard Waters. Couldn't have asked for a better first guest. He's always funny. It's always great to see him. It was a blast recording this. Just some quick programming notes. There will be new episodes out every Monday. If you like the content, please rate and subscribe. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, and Google Play, along with anywhere else you might think podcasts could be found. It'd be greatly appreciated as it helps new people find the podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, we are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all under the username KossTalk. And other than that, I'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.